years ago, I think it was at Pearson there, where Lou Harrison visited us, and I think it was there. I heard him say something along the lines of this, and forgive me if I don't quite get it exactly right, but it's something along the lines of, I'd rather be interesting than famous. And it really hit me. I just went, oh boy. Because, I'm an Eastman trained. Oh, I'm Stephen here. And Pulitzer. It's the simple goal. Pulitzer Prize. What's your goal? It's mine as well. Wouldn't take it if they gave it to me. That's sort of the core of my talk. And I want to ask that you forgive me for using the word contract. It's sort of a false note. It's a misnomer. I'm really not going to talk too much about contracts. If you want to know the nitty-gritty about contracts, well, there's plenty of people here that have had failed and wonderful, both sometimes simultaneously, contracts with choreographers and with commissioners and whatnot, and it's a perfectly legitimate topic and worth spending 40 minutes or so on. But that's just the sort of umbrella zone. A contract, or you used the word agreement when we were talking last night. I think that's a perfect word for that. Just the agreement that somebody has with a choreographer might be a better word for it, because I'm not sure the contract is necessarily in your interest or a good idea on a lot of levels. So I basically have 3 different sections of this thing. What's in it for you, concept and structure, really about collaboration, not so much contract, and then iteration and performance, how that works into the process of collaboration. So first of all, what's in it for you? And this is extremely selfish. First of all, art. And that is, first of all, art. Do you really need another piece for dance in your life? Is it really what you need? Are you sure? Are you kidding me? Or, of course, and anything in between. And those are sort of the extreme wings, like, oh, yes, another piece for dance. I will live for it. Or, oh my God, I just did 18 of them last year, or whatever. But if you really need one. And then, the follow-up questions of this type. Working with her, that wench, again. Working for nothing, again. Working for, oh, sorry, my other guy canceled, so 3 weeks from now, will you fly your sorry butt to New York and do not that I've done that 3 times last year. But do you really need another piece for dance? It's a very, very serious question. And if you don't feel that you're motivated to do a piece for dance, then don't. I mean, there's other music they can use. It doesn't have to be you. It doesn't have to be live. It doesn't have to be you. You is a big investment for you. And then in this situation, do you need to write another piece for dance in this particular situation? That situation has a lot of parameters, like money. Is it okay with you that you're working for nothing? Is it really okay with you that you're working for? Is it okay with your wife, your dog, that you're working for nothing, your grandkids, whatever you got? I love that guy. But in other words, what is about this situation that makes it worth it to you? And for many of us, there are completely different props, right? There's sort of the university props. For me, because I'm in Ann Arbor, it's very cool and sexy for me to do a piece in the New York Times and get a mention in the New York Times and get something in The Voice. And oh man, he's so in the zone, And weirdly enough, it's not so sexy for me to do something in Berlin and Japan, and I do that stuff. But the sexiness is New York, because New York is the center of dance, as we know.
What did that Times article say? Oh no! Oh crap, it's not the center. Where is it? Amsterdam is next. But yeah, so there are props. And are you going up for tenure, or are you trying to maintain some level of activity in a certain scene? I'm very interested in the scene in Salt Lake City. I can't make inroads to it. So somebody calls me and says, "Hey man, you want to do something here?" I'm like, "Yeah, I want to check out what's going on because I'm interested in dance." So like I want to check out that particular scene. Somebody wants to do something in India, and I'm thinking, well, okay, I don't know that much about, or I haven't worked with them, or I don't know that aesthetic. I'm intellectually curious, and maybe you can't pay me anything for this, but the payoff is there. It's artistic, or it's just somebody you want to work with, and there's no dough there, so you go for it. Somebody you don't want to work with, but the scene might be interesting. There are all these sort of things. Then, the most pessimistic view on this is that you're doing it for some sociological reason. Like a lot of psychologists argue strongly that the reason you play music is to get women or men, and that there's some sort of social sexual motivation. Like I've got chops, and that's attractive to somebody. So I have this gig, and that's attractive to somebody, and it's pathetic. But it's also it's real, and acknowledge it. And I'm sorry about that. Yeah, it's like, oh, you stud, you worked with Ailey, right? That's like it's a date maker. It is for some people, But there are props, in other words, that you get from various and sundry people, and it's and you may. I'm very interested in working with this sort of fringy Williamsburg scene, and I'm more than happy to do a gig for nothing there because I just want to know what's going on in that particular scene. It's very, very interesting to me what things are happening there, and I'm not going to charge somebody $15,000 for blah blah. Just so I can be fed at this incredibly rich trough of whatever's going on. So that's something, all these things are sort of in the mix, and that's why I'm not going to start out and say, well, if you're writing an electronic piece that's 17 minutes long, you should probably charge $4,500. What? I can't get there with you, I'm sorry, because it's going to have to be on an individual basis, and it's, like you said, it's an arrangement between you and a choreographer or some other people, so I'll kind of get to, so other people could come into this. Once you found that magic sort of nexus, that relationship that you want to encourage for whatever reason, whether it's money or artistic interest or macking on somebody, the next thing that I want to just kind of look at is the idea of concept and structure. How do you go about it, in other words? How do you make this happen? I've done a lot of klutzy collaborating with people like in Japan or Hungary, and the only relationship I could have with them was through email. So they would do iterations of pieces, and I would send, remember this Hungarian thing, it's like, forget it. This 3-week gap between them getting a CD of the next mix and then rehearsing with it and then sending me some information. So it's really out of sync and out of time. But what that whole collaboration afforded was that the concept was really clear. So she kept talking about the dancers are moving this way and that way. She had to use specific terminology. It wasn't just, let's kind of watch me. Get it, which that's, obviously highly specifically useful. But the concept became more, I really kind of like to think of just getting that concept. I'm not really being specific about it because I don't know what the hell it really is. But it's that thing, that concept that dances in the middle. And you're just, you're all spokes of the wheel. Everybody, costume, lights, choreographer, composer, whatever. Yeah, librettist, I don't know, electrician, engineer in some cases. So you got all these people. But if that thing is there, then there's this objective reality that you can all
democracy in Hungary, which was, if you remember what that piece was about. And loon migration is a metaphor for, it's just beautiful. It's just, oh my God, gorgeous image, gorgeous, I mean, stuff you could write about for years. Anyway, so to have that central concept, and then sort of to paraphrase the O.J. trials, if you can't relate, cut bait. If you can't dig this concept in the center, then don't do it. Don't do it. Do yourself a favor, do your choreographer a favor, and say, hey, I'm out of here, man. I mean, if I wasn't at my core roots a feminist, but, you know, I'm obviously a man, but I am very much a feminist and really believe in sort of the idea of women's power and women's entitlement and all that. I'm sure I couldn't have done 3/4 of the tasks I've done because our profession is just imbued with that sentiment. You know, it's sort of like at the core. If I couldn't relate to it, then I damn well should just write screenplay. That's get the hell out of Dodge. Get to my own people, men. But be clear on the concept. The structure business is tricky, and I can get into this a little bit later. But and I have a book coming out actually on collaboration with clergy, which is a real lunatic world as well. And I actually, in there, I say, here's what collaboration is not. By the way, collaboration is defined in one of the definitions in Webster's. I think it's collusion between enemies, which is a real interesting approach to working as a musician and band. But what I said in the book was, it's not collaboration for a dancer to come to me and say, hey, I want a 12-minute piece in G major in 6/8. That's not collaboration, and I'm not interested in that project at all. I'm not interested in 6/8 much, but definitely not 7/8. Yeah, it's all good. 7/8. It has to use frog samples or whatever the heck. That really isn't it. So what I'd like to do is to talk about core impulse, physical impulse. And I want to see a phrase or two before I say, yeah, I want to do a dance with you. Great, fabulous. Hey, how about show me some dance? As opposed to, this is really great because it enables them to be the front runner on the whole project. They have to put their stuff out there and go, okay, so this dance is about this gesture. Whatever it is, it's about that gesture. And you can always go back to that and say, hey, I thought this dance was about that gesture. I remember when you showed it to me, and I videotaped it, or I learned it. And I remember Sullivan talking about watching dances and as a musician and going, oh, I got to do that. I got to put that on my body. So I'll go to a rehearsal or whatever and see some gestures. I did a piece with my colleague Bill Young. I just had him teach me a short phrase. And, I'm a crappy dancer, but what the heck? I knew what it felt like to move through space. Do you think the music worked with the dance? Yeah, it's a no-brainer. Of course it did. Of course it did. So get that phrase or two right up front without you putting your filthy music all over it. And figure out, if you can, talk about the mood or core impulse. I mean, what's really driving the bus? What's at the center of that thing? What does the center of that thing feel like? A piece about frog skin. You know, what's your relationship with frog skin? Do you care? Are you sad about frog skin? Are you some sort of sick person that eats the frog skin? Do you like the taste of it? I'm being absurd on purpose because it's like the stuff that's at the center of most of these impulses is usually really deep, really heavy human stuff. And I don't want to cry because I'm tired. So, but you know what I'm saying? It's like this stuff is really intensely deep, and to find out what is the mood of this. In my classes at U of M, I do a couple of courses that really are bad comp lit classes, where we look at an idea like chaos just do that for a month. There's no art talk. Don't say what color this thing is, or what it's going to sound like, or what electronic crap you need to make this work. I don't even care. Let's just talk about residence, and let's get into, like, say, a labyrinth, or let's visit a prison. What's it like when that door locks? What's it like when you get to the center of the Shark Cathedral labyrinth and you go, whoa, I've just entered the Virgin Mary. Or whatever. That's what the people will say. It's like, yeah, get there, the flower. Anyway, it's very dirty. But in other words, what's the visceral feeling of this thing, and also what's the intellectual thing? But what's the mood of it? You know? I mean, this deal. We were kind of looking at that for a long time. I thought, what's the mood of that? I don't. Is it tickle, tickle, tickle? So, well, yeah, no, because I was thinking, because I did that last Saturday. I was on a webcam doing the Skype connection with my grandson, and I was doing this like into my little webcam, and he went, you know, he's in LA. It's crazy, but you know, so the mood of that was really fun, you know. But this could also be like, you know, a lot of anyway. So examine that stuff because it does really dramatically affect what the music is going to be like. You know, it will help you, and it'll clarify. It's just the more specific this thing is. I just want to reinforce that the more specific this thing is, the better the odds that everybody around the whole group is going to go, okay, I get it. I get what you're bringing to the table. We have to have an XYZ axis readout here because, you know, or we've got to have interactivity. It's really, really critical. Or the piece has to be in minor. It could be even that corner, you know, but it has to evoke a mood. I love the fact that in Indian music there's a specific correlation, which is very anti-Stravinsky and anti-Picasso, but this direct correlation between mood, vibe, and mode. So there's a rasa and a raga. The raga has a specific set of melodic behaviors, you know, ornamentation and all that, specific pitches, and that is supposed to imply this, you know. So it's not this sort of intellectual, oh, it's so spiritual, this music. Bullshit, it's not spiritual, it's specific what's a spiritual thing, but it's really specific. It's like, this isn't just hope, this is hope that's exoneration hope, you know, it's rajasic hope, or whatever. It's really highly specific, the rasa. And it's not some nebulous, oh, we got happy scales, major. We got sad scales, minor. That's stupid. You know, I mean, it's just this very complex, rigorous thing. And what's that about? What that's about is they're going to the core issue of what they're trying to express and say in that content, which is purely musical. Okay, so there you've got all this front-loaded stuff. Then the other questions you might ask, and this gets into the issue of iteration and performance. Iteration and performance. Does the piece die after the show? I've argued for a long time, ever since we sat together in the frozen tundra of Sunnybrook. I've argued for two things. One, the piece has to live after the show is over, and one, don't ever call me an accompanist. Those are the things I've been arguing about. I don't argue about much, but those are the ones. This piece dying after the show really comes up big. There are some big problems with that logic, though. Like every piece that Parch ever did died after the show, pretty much. The archives were there, but I mean, touring a Parch piece, hey, send me your parts, Harry. We want to do Delusion of Ophiri up here, up here in Madison. It'll be great, you know. I mean, I did a version of Barstow a couple of years ago. We had to build these, we did cyber instruments with them, but I mean, it was just a pain in the butt. So some pieces, okay, they're one-offs. Deal with it, you know. But again, go back to the opening. Do you really need another piece of this sort? I had a really bizarre evening. I interviewed Ravi Shankar and asked him about his big. I was talking to some of you guys last night about it. He has these huge dance dramas. They're not archived, and they're very much one-offs. But I mean, they're enormous, important one chorus, and who the heck is everybody singing? I mean, you kind of wonder. And I mean, I'm not a huge Ravi Shankar fan, but I still want to know. Because it's this, I would call it the delusional notion that you can wed Bolshoi aesthetic and Indian dance. But, you know, you want to see it, don't you? Just to kind of go, yeah! But and he knows they're one-ups. And when I asked him about it, I said, do you think we'll ever have a chance to like have a DVD of these things? He almost cried. I mean, he was just said, I don't know if there's going to be time. It's like Robin with his oxygen. It's amazing. So, you know, some pieces are going to be they're going to be one-offs, and you're going to have to deal with that. But maybe the payoff is there. But if it isn't, run. I personally really like to try as much as I can to have a piece live on after the gig. So, a case in point, a few years ago I was asked by a Costa Rican woman to write a piece for percussion sextet. And I've got some percussion stuff published, and it sells, and people play it, and they get money, so that's yay. But as the project developed, she kept manipulating the structure of it, and I realized, uh-oh, I'm going to destroy this piece in the process of making this piece for dance. It's just really not going to work. And I said, okay, I'll continue to work with you up to a certain point. And I had to maintain my own sense of like aesthetics about it, especially structure. But the cutoff had to be about two months before the performance, which was really problematic. And I mean, it got extremely ugly. But it was the only way for me to guarantee that I could still send this piece off to a publisher without having to write it twice, which I refuse to do because I'm busy. So, you know, it's protecting oneself in the process of this. And I think by saying there's a cutoff point for revision, really can do that. Now, there's another way to get around that. With electronic music, I did a project last year, and I'm doing another one pretty much similar this year, where I go into the studio, I see my phrases, you know, because dance is about dance. Just to remind us all. Then I'll go and sketch and get a little noise going. But taking the page out of the Larry Attaway playbook, I do, you know, like 30-second snippets and just say, hear this. And I'm not even sure that I like them all. But hear them and see if they work with what you have in mind. And then the dancer can take the 4 30-second chunks, throw that around against these phrases, and, you know, phone you up and say, number 2! You know, in which case, hopefully you didn't give them a sketch that you can't relate to at all, and you can kind of drive number 2 home. So you go into the studio then, and maybe you flesh out number 2 a little bit longer, and you work with them, and the thing gets a little bit more expanded. And maybe that's kind of a fluid structure. Like, you know the sound world that it inhabits, you know the kind of materials you're going to use. It's going to be all on these, or it's going to be all on those, or it's going to use G minor, or whatever the hell you use. But you've got some kind of sound world that you're inhabiting, and you actually record it as you go. So so in other words, everything's getting longer. The music is getting longer, the dance is getting longer, and as you go in to the studio with them, you're recording these iterations and giving them back CDs so that they can rehearse with them. I mean, assuming that you're not in every rehearsal like some crazy person. In the end, what I've been doing the last couple of years is to do this in a fluid environment on my laptop with a program that I developed in Mac, so I can actually improvise, spontaneously improvise, because, you know, computers are not real great at being hyper-spontaneous. That's one thing we objected early on with the Guilds. Yeah, it's great, we've got electronic stuff, but it's not as fluid a technology as me right here. And it's a huge problem. But tools are getting better, and we need to challenge the laptop to kind of meet the demands. Anyway, so we'll play different iterations of the piece, and we'll do a run, 3 runs, and then burn those all the different tracks, and then give do that about 3 more times, and then, roughly 2 months or so before the performance, go, okay, that's it. You've got about 12 versions of this piece. Rock and roll. Pick one, and away you go. And the problem you have to deal with is the fact that maybe they'll pick one that isn't your favorite. This is why demo love is bad. Okay? Listening to the first moment, looking at that first gesture, that's just the beginning. Journey of 1,000 miles begins with a simple step, right? So get rid of it. That first gesture might not be in the final dance, and that first musical impulse might not even be in the final. You don't know. But as things develop, let the process find itself. And this also, think of what agency this gives to the choreographer. They're actually picking, they're picking the track. The devious part about this from our side of events is that they can't go, I don't really like this track. You suck, you big deal. So you deflate all that angst, and a lot of the problems that we get into as working as collaborators come from us saying, no, that's the right track for you. No, you should know better. And us as musicians saying, well, we know what works. Well, what we really know is what works musically. Sorry, but that's really, that is a few. So to get out of the demo love thing, that's tricky. Some people, they'll get their first little trickle of music from the musician and go, that's it, that's what I want. You improvise, you get like a cellist and a pianist, and you improvise something, and you got this nice texture, and you give it to them and say, it's just an improvisation, for God's sake. Don't choreograph to every movement, to every note, to every rhythm. Please don't. And sure enough, they go, oh, I love it so much. And I choreographed exactly to it. Now, we're performing in 3 weeks. Will you transcribe it? You dumb jerk that you didn't tell them that you're not going to do that. Don't fall in love with this. Don't fall in love with this beat, this phrase, this structure. Fall in love with the vibe. Tell me, reaffirm that my relationship to this is right, and your relationship to this is right, and we're all having a shared relationship to this. Then I will write. What did you say, Dan?
I just said, where are they trained to do that?
Where are they trained to do what?
They're trained to have CD love.
Right.
They don't train to something.
That's right. That's why you have to tell them that they may not. Oh, they will.
They have CD. Don't let them keep the CD.
Now, I patently disagree with you because they need to hold on to that CD so that they can fall in love with it. They need to understand that we're all equal spokes. You're right. A lot of choreographers do not respect the fact that we're all equal spokes. And spokes is a really good metaphor. Because if you ever lost a spoke, that damn thing is not stable. So you're not optional. Your opinion is not optional. Your heart is not optional. And your approach to the center is not optional. Nor is theirs. So to honor one over the other is really dangerous. But that goes back to the original thing. Do I really need another piece for dance with this person who won't respect it when I say, no, don't? And you're right. It happens. I bet, without exaggerating, 30 times it's happened to me. You're like, oh, I really like that sketch. I choreographed every note. Well, you dumb ding dong. But dumb or me to not say, I don't want to get into it, but there's a really nice long email that I wrote to a colleague of mine that was very specific. Now I'm giving you this CD with these tracks on here, with the understanding, the agreement that you will not choreograph to it. Which sounds like some weird Zen Buddhist exercise. Here's this music, but don't listen. Yeah.
Just one very important distinction, and that the process is the ultimate performance recorded live.
Right. And that's
hard to really start the improv live. It's incredibly easy to allow the music for
Yep. And this gets into the other question, like, all right, so I'm writing for percussion sextet. Now what do I do? Because you can't do this iteration model with a percussion sextet. You have to write notes down, they have to rehearse them, and they have to read them, and they have to play them. So that means that at the front end, you're saying, what is this piece ultimately about? Do we really agree? In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and talk about this one piece where this came out. I said, all right, another bird piece. This piece is about birds. Hummingbirds specifically. Hummingbirds have the highest metabolism rate of any whatever. So they're like all the time. And in order to not fall off their little perch, they're going like this all the time. And what's that like? And the choreographer said it's like my mother. Hey, it's not like that thing! Because my mother is so resilient. She's so small and colorful. She's just this beautiful thing, and yet, you know, she's not this big, enormous eagle floating through the air or whatever. She's not this, the kingfisher. She's just this teeny, teeny little small bird. But she's so gorgeous and beautiful and rare. She's a jewel. And yet she's got this energy that's so incredibly important and so inspirational. This piece was about her mother. And I'm going, hey, you know, it's kind of different than my relationship to hummingbirds, but that's cool. And I thought about my own mother, and it's a very different kind of mother that I have. And she was thinking about her mother's, well, anyway, the idea then transferred into, oh, this should be a percussion piece because I'm just thinking about marimbas. You know, how do you hold a long note in marimba? You play a million notes. That's how you do a whole note. And I thought, well, my God, you know, it's kind of like what your talk was about. Like, okay, well, so the illusion is you're having this duration thing going on, but really it's this, you know. And it was to me a very perfect musical metaphor. So he starts out with this kind of very pretty chorale, because I mean, birds are really pretty, you know, it's kind of a chorale thing on marimbas. And I mean, of course it worked. You know, we were in sync, completely in sync. But we spent all summer long not rehearsing, not doing improvisations with 6 musicians. I can't afford that. But we said, we just talked about hummingbirds, talked about our mothers, and drank lots of, you know,
I think you want to go.
tea.
I think you would go back to one of those situations where they fell in love with your demo thing and talk specifically about that, because when you send a demo thing, I mean, do you ever send something that's good enough quality where if they fall in love with that CD love, you can go, oh, okay, use it.
Yeah, but you let them know that. You let them know. If you know, like, if I, like, back to the piano and cello, because this has happened, back to cello and piano improvisation, you know darn well the last thing you want to do as a composer, last thing I want to do as a composer is to record with this really great cellist and improvise, and then guess what I'm doing for the next 3 weeks? You know, I dig doing that with like John Coltrane and Cecil Taylor, but my own stuff, not so much. Transcription is not my bag. I want to write that piece. That's why I'm thinking piano and cello. That's what's in it. Going back to the opening part, what's in it for me is I want to write another piece for cello and piano because I think that'll work with this choreographer, and I think that reflects what's going on in the center of the wheel. And I also think that the two of us will work. It's just all this organism that can happen. So like, don't tell me that you want that particular melody. Tell me that the mood is right. Tell me I'm in the right ballpark. But for God's sake, don't choreograph to that. Now, it's absurd also to think that people can't choreograph to music without being attached to the rhythm. I mean, that's a really old-fashioned way of thinking.
But it still sounds like the end product for you.
Yeah.
And what you're requiring is that it gives me a piece that can be written out. So, but for them, I mean, if it's perfect and the recording is good enough quality, we'll use that, and I'll write my thing.
Oh, yeah,
the cellist.
yeah.
With the cellist for me.
Right, this is a semantic thing, because I read your contract as me and the cellist playing live for this performance. But yeah, it's just a recording. Yeah, what the heck? Just take it, you know, see you later. Now I'll write the composition. And it's based on that dance.
And if you want the cellist and I to play, well, we're not going to play this recording that I sent.
Right.
Exactly. Now you can use the
years ago, and I sent off a version of the piece. It was a graphics score, then a series of pieces that were basically watercolor paintings used as graphic scores. And the realization that we did, of course, is going to be, light years different than whatever the heck we do for the performance. But it was the same vibe because we were playing from the same score. I mean, that's if you buy the idea of graphic score. Some people know I don't want to have dinner with you. But, this graphic score was going to be the same graphic score. We're going to use the same musicians. We have our same kind of bag of tricks that we bring to the graphic score. And of course it was fun. But there wasn't this assumption that, oh, well, when Cheryl comes up and does the Tom Do thing, that, I should have heard a trombone go through. Sorry, Jack, that's not what
This kind of score is about.
yeah, exactly. But everybody was on board because the idea of flexibility was imposed upon us by some reaction to whatever was at the center of the board. It kind of goes back to that thing over and over again. So if you can do it, improvise the entire piece, in other words, during a run, and do it again, and do it again, and then give multiple takes if you work in an electronic domain. Give multiple takes to the choreographer and let them pick, and then just flow with it. Yeah.
I just had to add one. So somebody comes to me, like I'm giving material to not only choreographers, but also film directors, and I found that my rule of thumb is don't give it to them unless you're willing for them to use it. That's just what I've decided, because you're just not being realistic. Some people are not going to be able to deal with your cautionary statement or your agreement with them.
Sure.
And I think, so I'm sitting here wrestling with what you're saying. What do I do to disagree? And I think the bottom line is, I would add to what you're saying, don't kid yourself about your collaborators. Don't have to talk and think I said it with someone who's going to go ahead and use it.
It goes, I disagree.
Yeah.
You
But
can go back.
then you're giving up all those steps.
You can go back to the original intent here, which is, do I really need to do this? How badly do I need to do this? Well, look, what I'm saying is that if somebody does say, all right, you did this sketch, and I'm in it to win it. This is my demo. I'm sticking with it. I love this thing so much. And you've already made it clear that you're not going to stick by that that's not the end result. This is a path. This is just a step on the way to the whole thing. That's a great time to say, I'm out of here. Sure. It's an excellent time. And look, we don't do this enough. We don't say, that's it. And the beauty of it is that you can walk out of a room. I mean, I've been to a lot of recording sessions where a bass player or whatever gets all up and he says, screw this, I'm out of here. And you go, oh my God, we got 6 more hours of studio time. It's expensive. I flew all the way from blah, blah, blah. What? And 20 minutes later, the hissy fit is over, and you have the best session of your life. Because that gas that stench has been left out, whatever. And so it's about maintaining control. And it's also a reminder, like the same probably Natalie was talking about. It's a reminder that all the spokes are equally important on that sucker. And if anybody thinks that one is more important than the other, it's your job to go, oh, not so much.
I just think you need to have them all in your repertoire. I'm all for those kind of policy decisions.
I'm not into it. All I'm doing is speaking from my own experience and what works for me. What works for you, however, let's be honest, is predicated on the notion that you're in this situation, you want that film. For whatever reason, you want to get that score done for that film. So that overrules some other aesthetic thing. For me, I'm whatever, in my own mental space or at a point in my life where I can go, you know what? It's just not worth it for me to destroy the structure of my composition so that it fits your whatever thing. And unplug. Now, has it happened? I wrote an orchestra piece a few years ago. We're lucky enough in Michigan to have an orchestra play with our big, annual dance concert once in a while. And pretty rare. And they said, hey, you want to write an orchestra piece? And I'm like, sure. And there's no money involved, but what do I do? And it's hard to get orchestra performances. So I'm like, yeah, all right. Well, 3-4 weeks before, I really like this whole waltz section. It's so fun. It takes Cheryl D'Souza, because they're passing it along, and it's this whole thing based on Jane Austen, I don't know, whatever. And I'm going, all right, so that section has to be longer. So suddenly this kind of weird version of clarinet polka that I put in this piece, where, you just put repeat signs in there. Now, what that means then is if I want to sell that piece and get it done by other orchestras, which I do, I don't want it to be a one-off for an orchestra piece, are you kidding? That means I'm going to have to go in and edit that sucker out. I can still do it, the piece still lives, I can just white out all those repeat signs that they penned in with red ink over my parts, and then the piece is still fine. There's, yeah, but it's got to be human. Go ahead.
Very brief story. Last year, I had one of my colleagues got a commission to do a new musical collections in New York. She wanted me to do the score. She wanted it in my score. And we talked about the side of electronics, piano, and cello. And I would play the piano live and cello. And I have a friend in Southern California who's a fantastic cellist and a great person to work with who's very comfortable with improvisation. And we put it together. It was a very simple structure. I told her what we wanted. We had a recording session, the choreography, the recording session. And, we did all the right things. We made a bunch of versions of the piece in the recording session. So when she rehearsed with the dancers, she was able to throw on different versions. So the dancers didn't marry one performance. They got used to the idea that it would be different. And so all of that was working really well. And then I went to New York and I had to hire another cellist because this cellist couldn't make the trip, and the budget really wasn't there for it. I hired a very good cellist, and I picked this person because they had incredibly good cello. And there's a very romantic opening improvisation, and it was great. And it was just really, he was just different as a person, and as a personality. And I tried to explain that going in, that it's going to be different because of this. And so the choreographer, we worked, and I pushed him on it, and about being more aggressive and more physical with his instrument. And he got to a very interesting place with it. And the choreographer was never happy with the performances. And, she's very diplomatic about it and never complaining about it. It was because it wasn't what she got used to with those recordings. And I basically felt I had to go back to the place at that point. She's not performing, I'm engaged in this at this point. Am I happy with what we're doing? And I was actually thrilled with what we were doing. So I had to have the self-confidence, which has always been my battle, to go that I'm really happy with what we did. And I gave you my best, and it was good. And so I had to live with it. So ultimately, collaborations won't always satisfy every person. Once you put your life away and move it exposed. But you have to be able to walk away and go, this was good, and there was something there. And the only thing I learned from it was to even more aggressively warn the choreographer, it's going to be different, and you're going to have to understand that and accept that, because it's another brain being brought into the picture and the system.
That's great. Well, thanks. What I'm trying to do really today with this talk is to just encourage us all to, as much as possible, in as simple way as possible, to really encourage collaboration as opposed to compromise. And that means going both ways. The only way collaboration works as not compromise is to respect the choreographer and to respect yourself. And too often, as musicians, we're encouraged to be malleable and to let these scores ruin themselves midstream. And it's just, I can see the nods in the faces around the room going, we're hurt puppies from this crap. But the solution is not to be arrogant, and the solution is, hey, let's all get to the table. Let's do this in a way that really invites everybody's opinion, including your own. In one way, and I hope it's clear that I'm being subversive here, I'm saying, no, get the choreographer to show you material first. Get them to commit first. Give them sketches and have them say, no, I like that right there. That's really great. It's not a moving target. It's no longer a moving target. They do like it. Yeah.
I had an experience, really a successful one. I was probably in the orchestra. We was a 5-section piece, and I had several sections, I gave Lucy up first, and she created a around it. And I thought that would give you more control of the ultimate event. And I never, but the movement that she made was utterly different than what I would have imagined. And I didn't really get it, and didn't get any satisfaction out of it. But I'm like, okay, I made it. But it's just, I mean, it is quite, I'm sure you, I would agree with this, that you want to respect his own perspective and subject artists. And neither of them is other their perspectives. Yeah, I love the slow analogy, it's true. But I think we can all agree, we don't necessarily have to be happy with everything. It's great when we are
No.
searching after that.
Well, often we don't know. We don't really know. Like the choreographer might not have felt great about the collaboration or the music, but the audience member might have thought that was extremely cohesive. I had somebody came up to me and they saw a recent work that I did, a big evening length thing. They said, "Oh man, that was the best thing you ever did," and I could kill them because I hated it. I hated my contribution because of what happened in the collaboration. I hated what the choreographer did. I hated what I had to do as a musician. I hated. And they're like, so cohesive and everything was just perfect. And the way you use that text, oh my God, it was amazing.
Thank you very much.
Anyway, I just want to finish by saying that I don't do the following. I personally don't do the following. Dance to the music. I do dance with the music. That is problematic for some people. The idea that, I start with eights. Well, maybe you do start with eights. That's great. I hope you can count. But don't tell me that I'm going to start with eights. I don't work that way. I don't know. When just imagine you're going to do a piece about your own child dying, and somebody's going to say to you, you're going to start with eights. No, it's insipid. That's horrible. Oh, it's terrible. So don't tell me what the meter of my soul is. But and it also has something to do with aesthetic choice. You might want to work with somebody that really needs a structure, a grid, a rhythmic grid. And what is that? And I don't have a lot of advice for you other than write the piece early on and have all of those great conversations about what's at that center of that wheel early enough on so you really agree what the piece is about emotionally. And then trust yourself to be the good musicians that you are and write a piece that probably is going to work 90% of the time. It's going to be fine if you have that front-loaded experience. If you don't, devastating. All right, on we go. Yeah.